Welcome to Elisha Space, a sanctuary for healing, growth, and authentic conversations. I'm your host, Elisha, and today I have the honor of sitting down with Janna Herron, an award-winning author, musician, and a woman who has turned her deepest pain into purpose. Janna is the author of Transforming Tears, and her newest book, Brokenness Restored: The Path to Recovery, is a healing journey. And she has been published through the National Alliance on Mental Health Illness, where she also serves as an Ending the Silence presenter for suicide prevention. Her story is one of raw honesty, fierce faith, and the kind of resilience that reminds us that God's light shines brightest through our broken places. Before we begin, I want to gently let you know that today's conversation will touch on topics like depression, eating disorders, and suicidal ideation. So please take care of yourself as you listen, and know that resources like the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline are always available to you. I'd like to welcome you, Janna, to the show. Could you share us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Hi, yes. My name is Janna, and I am now 26 years old. I grew up in an abusive environment, and so that's what led to my mental health struggles. But by the grace of God, I was, blessed that He has been there with me every step of the way. And that is how I attribute my successes to Him and how He's helped me through my story. Have been through a very long mental health treatment journey, that's involved long-term facilities that I've lived at, hospitals due to my suicide attempts, and so that was difficult, but I am living in recovery right now, but that, of course, doesn't mean that I don't still struggle, because I definitely still do. It looks differently how I struggle now versus how I struggled in the past.
Thank you for sharing your story with us as you felt comfortable sharing it. Your book, Brokenness Restored, what planted the seed to write that? And what planted the seed to write that book?
Yeah, so I would say I was most touched to write that book by around the time that I last attempted suicide, which was actually not that long ago. It was about maybe a year and a half or so to 2 years, and I ended up in a psych hospital where they gave us a sheet of paper, and it had, like, a car window, and, like, so you could see the rearview mirror, and they told you to write in the rearview mirror what you were going to let go of, and then in the front of, like, the windshield, you would write, like, what you were looking forward to, and I felt like I was like, I know what I should write in the rearview mirror, and that is, to let go of, like, my traumatic past and to let go of the eating disorder. I really struggled with anorexia, and I still do, and so I knew that I was like, those are the things I should write there, and so I did end up writing them down, and I shared it in the group, and there was a girl in the back who raised her hand and said, "I wish I could write that down on my paper." And it sort of, like, hit me, and I was like, "I wanna use my story." Like, I wanna use my story for good, and so over the course of only 2 weeks, I really dug into the scripture. I sat down with my Bible, and I prayed about it, and it only took me 2 weeks to write that book. I wrote about, my whole it's mainly about my treatment journey. So my mental health treatment journey, what it was like being in the hospitals and those long-term residential places.
Wow. Wow, that is powerful. That is powerful. You know, you've been open about your battle with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and anorexia, and surviving multiple suicide attempts. For someone who's listening to you right now, who's in the thick of that type of darkness, what do you want them to hear first?
I would want them to hear that there is hope. Even though it's very hard to see it in the moment, because I can remember there was one psych hospital I was at where there was 2 girls that reminded me of exactly where I was when I was their age. So they were probably 19, 20, and I was 25. And so I was like, they are sitting exactly where I was, having so many suicidal thoughts, couldn't even see light at the end of the tunnel. And, they were asking me like, how are you like where you're at right now? Like, how can you see the light, basically?
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to remind them that there are people that care. And so that's like important to hold on to when you're sitting in the thick of the darkness. And even though it's hard to see it, you have to kind of just, remind yourself that there are people that care about me. And something I did that was very helpful for me was especially when I'm depressed, and maybe some people tend to scroll through social media or be online. And so I would follow a lot of like positivity things. Like, and so then it's helping me fight the negative thoughts that I can't fight myself. Because when I'm scrolling, I'm seeing all these like positive things, and so that's like helping me fight those thoughts. And then also I would like subscribe or sign up to have like encouragement texted or emailed, and so that was also something that really helped me in my journey as well.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. Hearing that makes a really big difference, especially when you're in the thick of all of that, all of those things. Surrounding yourself with positivity, I believe it helps shift the energy that's around that.
Right, and it's,
Go ahead.
And it's hard, like I said, when you're in the midst of that darkness, it's really hard to do it for yourself, which I really want to like acknowledge. But that's where it's like we can take those steps to get it externally, like get it from other sources, or maybe ask loved ones to check in on us daily or send us something encouraging.
Right. When you were in your lowest moments, you kind of touched on this, but what did help look like for you?
It looked like people being very direct with me and being very open, but also in a very caring way. But for me, I needed people to directly ask me, like, are you having thoughts of suicide? Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Or even just what are you thinking right now? I just got engaged, and my fiance, something that's been really great that he does is when I'm quiet is he'll just ask me, what are you thinking? And so it gives me space to be open and to be honest. And that's something that's really helps. And then also, but I understand that it takes time to learn that vulnerability and to learn how to be open and talking about, anything you're struggling with. But that's where like having a good support system and having those people, those trusted individuals is really important, and building up like that support circle.
Absolutely. Was there something, well, you mentioned your fiance, that what he would say to you that made a difference. Was there anything else that was said to you that kind of like shifted you as well, or would help you? Just so the audience who are also, maybe there's some members of the audience where they're trying to find ways to support their loved ones, which is why I was asking the question.
Right. I think just hearing that you are loved and cared for, you can never be told that like enough. Like, I think you can just hearing it repeatedly is like really helpful. I like used to struggle with like flashbacks due to PTSD. And something that would be very helpful for me to hear from a loved one was for them to have me repeat back after them. For example, like to repeat, like, I am safe. Like, I am safe, I am loved. It's those affirmations, to repeat those and to hear those. I think just encouragement and affirmations in general would be very helpful from loved ones, and to know that they're going to support you no matter what, even through what you're struggling.
I think that's so powerful too. Just speaking life to someone, I think it makes a powerful difference. Just speaking life in general makes a big difference. You know, as a counselor, I often tell my clients that healing is not linear. I don't tell them it, often tell them that. Can you walk us through what that looked like for you, the setbacks, the messy middle of it all?
Right, yeah. I've had many setbacks. I definitely, especially in the eating disorder world, they say that, yeah, recovery isn't linear. And I mean, I still have my ups and downs. And I guess, like, for me, it looked like still needing treatment. Like, even though, I was like, I don't want to go back to a place, or like, I felt, especially because of my faith, I felt like I should be getting better. I shouldn't be struggling.
Well, let's touch on that for a minute, Janna, because you bring up a really good point. Healing is not linear. And, so you go up, people are praying for you, or you go up to the altar for prayer. And it's like, shouldn't I be farther along? A lot of times when it comes to soul wounds, it's a gentle unpeeling. And I believe the reason is for our benefit, because if we were to really feel all of our soul wounds at one time, I really believe it would take us out. Because this world is a broken world, and we have deep hurts. I don't care who you are. Like, there's not one person on this planet that does, in some size, shape, or form, that does not have a soul wound. And audience, when I refer to that, we're talking about, our mind, our will, and our emotions. That the place where we make decisions. There's not one person on this earth that hasn't said or done something they wish they haven't done or said, or maybe deep down, maybe you wish you would have done it, because that's the humanness of it all. And there's not one person on this earth who's not received some type of emotional wound or harm, that was intentional or not, because we live in a broken world. And sometimes I think the church, most of the time unintentionally, or I like to think it's unintentional, says, well, one and done. And that's not true. It's not always true. Even when you see people go up for physical healing, in order for them to receive that physical healing, there was a journey that got them there, And so there's no such thing. It's kind of like, and you've been in the recovery world, so it's all or nothing thinking. And we both know that all or nothing thinking is not possible. It's not possible, because we live in a broken, there's always going to be a percentage of something that's there. So I'm glad that you're bringing that up as far as what that metal looks like when it comes to releasing that, because that's powerful.
I feel like I should have learned my lesson after my first suicide attempt. And I talk about that in my book. It was like, I ended up, I had liver damage, kidney damage, my heart was failing. And I feel like I should have learned my lesson after that, especially after what I physically put my body through. And turning that over to God and saying, like, okay, I know I can't do this again, but it happened, 5 more times. And I feel like every time I was like, I should have learned my lesson. And I know realistically that I should not be testing God in that way of like, my life is not mine to take. And so, but I still struggle. And I definitely, still struggle with like it's especially like if things don't go well for me. I have borderline personality disorder. So my emotions and for someone with BPD, the emotions are just intensified. So when something doesn't go my way or I get a no from somebody or something, my emotions just shoot way up and all logical thinking goes out the window. And so that is still what I still definitely do struggle with, although I'm a lot better about, coping and coming back down from those highs of emotions. And then also, if I still touch on what I'm struggling with, with anorexia, it's hard because I have to face food every day. And my mind is telling me, it still screams at me that I shouldn't eat that meal, or I should skip here, or I should skip there. But logically, I know I'm like, I have to feed my body in order to function, in order to help other people. I think that's the driving force right now is like, I want God to use me and I want God to use my story. And so I was like, I have to make sure I'm in a good place in order to be used by him.
So it sounds like this has been like really been helping you sharing your story, because I'm big on that too, that we should share our stories, right? Because you never know how it's going to help someone else. And also too, a lot of times when you share your stories, you realize how far you come, you know, because we're always in the middle of something, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're always going to be in the middle of something. So sometimes sharing your story lets you know how far you've come, how much you've overcome. And the messy middle, that's the beauty of the messy middle, is knowing that you're going to a place that is bringing you to where that's more holistic, that's more that's a great fit for you. It may not be a great fit for everybody else, but it's a great fit for you, and that makes a difference, you know?
Right. And I think it's important to even acknowledge that, like we're talking about, healing isn't linear.
Mhm.
That we're gonna struggle because of this broken world. But I think, it's just what we do moving forward. It's like the next right thing, what that next step is for us when we do struggle or hit a roadblock.
Right, right. You know, your book talks about God showing his power through your brokenness. I think that's so powerful. And that his light through your darkness, his grace through your shame. You guys really have to get this book. So, was there ever a season where your faith felt like part of the struggle rather than the solution?
Yes, for sure. I touch on that in the book as well. I talk about how the church I grew up in I did develop, some church hurt because it was sort of after my first suicide attempt, it was sort of gossiped about throughout the church to where I felt like I could not show my face
Oh, I'm so
there
sorry.
again. That was really hard because that was the church I grew up in. It's just I felt like I was this girl that grew up in church and I was this girl that was really accomplished, was on the worship team, was very involved, and I felt like people must be seeing me that my faith wasn't enough. Like
Hmm.
why would I try to take my life if I had a strong faith? But it's not about not having a strong faith because I talk about it in my book too. I say that when I wanted to attempt to take my life, I wasn't actually thinking about, I think, the process of dying. I was thinking of, I want to be in heaven with God.
Hmm.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, I just want to like escape this pain and go to heaven and like skip over this earth. But of course, like God has a purpose for us here. That's why we're here. That's why I'm still here.
Hmm.
Um, and so it wasn't that I didn't have faith. It wasn't that I didn't pray. because I definitely prayed and I talked to him a lot. I told him about my hurts and my pains and my struggles. It's just that, and I would ask him, "Why won't you take this from me?" And I think the most important question I was asked from a mentor was, if God took this away from you, your mental illness, your everything that you struggle with, would you still deeply rely on him and like be really walking really closely with him, dwelling on his strength, not your own? And I think when I really thought about it, my answer to that question is no. Because I can be a very prideful person, and I think if I didn't have my struggles, I would probably think that I could do it on my own without him. So I think that's perhaps why he hasn't taken it from me. He may take it from some people, but that's just along my own journey is what I've seen is I need to dwell on his strength and not my own.
I think that's a really good point that you're bringing up because I know for myself, I stopped asking God those questions. I just have. And the reason I stopped asking him those questions is because I kind of want to, first of all, for me, it's become exhausting. And then the other part of it too is I've learned the importance of enjoying the journey, like to expect that we're going to live in a world where there's not going to be a trial or some sort of a tribulation is unrealistic because we live in a fallen world. So
Mhm.
I just want to like enjoy the journey of whatever that is and embrace the good that's within that journey so that I can move forward in a way that's the best version of me, you know?
Yeah, I gave a book talk at First Baptist Houston to a Sunday school class
Hmm.
not that long ago, and I had a lady ask me, she read my book and she asked me, "It seems like some treatment centers you went to made you worse."
Mm,
And I responded with, I mean, I was like, "I wouldn't take it back though." Like, that's still part of my journey, and I still, even if it wasn't as helpful as it was supposed to be, I
hmm.
still learned something from there. It's still a part of my story, and God is still using that today. And so it really is like every part of the journey, even the hard parts, are a part of your story and lead you to who you are. Like, it makes you the person that you are today.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned some biblical truths that were revealed during your healing journey. Is there one scripture or truth that became an anchor for you when nothing else held?
Yeah, Psalms 23 is the big one that I really would recite to myself. And then I had a therapist asked me actually to find a verse that would be that anchor. And so for me, that was, I believe, verse 4, where it's, "And though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for your rod and your staff, they comfort me." That piece of scripture, sometimes, if I'm really struggling, that's all I can recite, and that's all I can remember and hold on to. Um, and that's the one, that's been the most meaningful for me. Um, and also, I'm not exactly sure, I don't remember the reference, but, it talks about there is a time for everything,
Mm,
and it goes
hmm.
through there's a time for this, there's a time for that. It's in my book as well, and, um,
It's
I
basically the whole book of Ecclesiastics, you
yes,
know?
yes. Yeah,
Right, right.
and that's been very helpful for me too because I was like, I can sort of look back now and see I can block off parts of my journey and group them together, and I was like, "Oh, that was a time for that, and that was a time for me to learn certain coping skills, or that was a time for me to learn forgiveness," or, and then now, I'm in a much better season, so now is the time for me to learn how to maintain recovery, I
Mhm,
think, and
mhm.
to be able to, help other people.
Wow, wow. You know, anorexia is often misunderstood, and you did talk about that, right? People see the physical symptoms, but they miss the spiritual and an emotional war underneath. Can you help our listeners understand what that battle can look like?
Yeah, it is very much a mental disorder. I have always struggled with food. I probably had something similar to ARFID when I was younger, which is just the fear of the food making me sick. And that led to when I was 12, it turned into anorexia when I started grouping the body image aspect into it, where I felt like, I needed to be really thin. But it's very much in the mind because it's a daily fight. I think I was talking about how you can't avoid food. I think I talk sometimes about how, like, for addiction, alcohol and drugs, it's very clear that the solution is abstinence. But with anorexia, you can't abstain from food. I mean, that's the disorder.
Right.
And you have to face it every day. And you have to, sit in front of that meal and you have to fight the voice in your head. So the voice in my head is actually called Ed for eating disorder.
Hmm.
It helped me to give it a name because it's separating it from myself. Like that is not my identity. And so it helps me to, say like, Ed, I'm not going to listen to you today. Like, I'm not going to listen to you for this or for that. But sometimes when I do really struggle, that's where it's helpful to have like my support people. Like, my
Hmm.
fiance is especially really good about this, about like being the hopeful part of my brain. And like, when I'm saying, like, this has so many calories, this is like, I'm too scared to eat this, like, it really is like a fear, like it can be a fear of food, a fear of weight gain. And he has to be that positive voice that's like battling that internal voice for me.
Hmm.
But I'm learning, now that to do it for myself and to fight like every thought that comes up, but it is very exhausting. It is exhausting to fight that every day, every meal, every time we have to think about what am I supposed to eat next? And that's very draining. And spiritually too, I know biblically that my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I know that I'm supposed to be taking care of this vessel that God has given me, but it is very hard because like I said, it's in the brain. It's all the negative thoughts that come up just like with depression, you think all those negative thoughts. It's the same thing, but it's just tailored to food and to body image.
Thank you for sharing that because I don't think a lot of people understand what that looks like for them. Gotta pivot a little bit and just ask you, can you tell us about the In His Image conference in Dallas, what happens there, and why is connecting body image to faith so important for women's healing?
Right. So my book has a foreword written by Kristen Williams, and she is a faith-based dietitian in Dallas, Texas, and she is the founder of the In His Image conference. I attended this past November. It usually happens in November every year.
Hmm.
And so they have women that get up there and share their stories about their struggles with body image, specifically with eating disorders. And then there are breakout sessions that happen so like for example, there was one that talked about using the armor of God to battle these body image thoughts. And something that I learned at the conference that was very eye-opening for me was that body image is a like a spiritual warfare. It's a spiritual battle because we are doing the enemy's job for him if we are directly attacking our body and speaking badly about our bodies because we're created in the image of God. So if we're created in the image of God and we're talking bad about ourselves, we're directly, in a way, indirectly attacking God himself.
Mm.
And so that was really eye-opening for me. And so that conference is really great. There's a lot of resources there as well, just like for the faith-based community in terms of like eating disorders and those that struggle with body image.
That sounds like
That sounds like a really
a really good
a really good
conference.
conference.
Your book includes reflection questions for readers. Again, audience, you guys got to get this book. What's the one question you hope makes a reader stop and really sit with their answer? Is there just one question, though?
Yes. There's a little story that goes with this.
Okay.
I went up for prayer at a church one time, and this lady directly looks at me and says, "Are you hiding something from God?" And I was completely thrown off guard. But she gave me this like image. She was like, "You're standing here in a box, and you're in the presence of God." She was like, when I told her a bit of my story, she was like, "It seems like you're holding your arm outside of the box, and you're holding a bag, and in that bag is what you're hiding from Him." So in a way, you're not giving like your entire heart to him. And you're giving most of it, but you're holding on to a small part that you're hiding from him, but he knows. But it's just that you just don't want to give it to him fully. And so in my book, there's a question that asks, what might you be hiding from God and how might you be able to surrender it to him fully? And so I think that's something that I really would like readers to reflect on along their healing journey and in recovery. But also, the book is titled Brokenness Restored. So it talks about, how God can use broken people for his glory.
I love that because it's so true. No matter how whole I think I might be, he doesn't get the glory from that. He gets the glory from my brokenness, you know, and how I've come
Right.
through with that. Who did you write this book for?
I wrote it when I had to get it published. I had to write a proposal, and they asked about target audience.
Hmm.
And I pictured this woman, maybe young adult, middle age, that's struggling in some way with their mental health. Doesn't have to be specific, but is just asking God questions about, why do I struggle? I feel too broken. Like, can you really use me? And maybe is seeking seeking help. And so that is who my target, person that I envisioned when I wrote this book. But of course, like, I hope it blesses anyone that picks it up.
Right, right, right. I think it will help anyone too. But I love that you had that in mind. You saw that person of who you knew you could go and help. I just want to
Mhm.
ask this question because I love asking these types of questions. If you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would you say to her?
I would tell her that everything will be okay.
Hmm.
Because I mean, it's a simple line, but I think that I just needed to hear it because of all the chaos I had in my life. And it's really hard because I was so used to that chaos. And like now I'm in a good season with good chaos, and I've just learned in therapy that good chaos is actually a thing. Um and so I can still be chaotic, but in a good way, especially with wedding planning. Um but I just needed to hear that everything would be okay. Um yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Where can listeners and, you know, find Brokenness Restored, follow your work, and just learn more about the NS Image Conference? Where can they connect with you?
I have a website. It's just jannaherron.com. 2 N's, 2 R's, first and last name. Um, my Facebook is a lifetime of stories. That is kind of what I envision my ministry to be. But I'm also hoping to make my book, Brokenness Restored, into a Christian nonprofit that will help churches open a mental health ministry that'll provide support groups, one-on-one low-cost therapy, an IOP program, intensive outpatient program, and then ideally a transitional living program.
That would be awesome.
Yes, that is the hope, what I'm gonna be praying for over the next few years or so, and hopefully God opens those doors. Um, And I'm on Instagram, and LinkedIn. So just Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Well, I just want to thank you, Jana, for being so transparent and courageous and sharing your journey with us. Like, this isn't easy, but our conversation is proof that our brokenness does not disqualify us from God's restoration, right? So, audience, be sure to grab your copy of Brokenness Restored, The Path to Recovery is a Healing Journey, and follow Jana's incredible work as she continues to use her gifts in writing and music to bring God's glory and shine a light on mental health. If anything in today's episode stirred something in your heart, I encourage you to sit with it, pray with it, and reach out, whether that's to a counselor, a trusted loved one, or a crisis line. As always, this is Elisha's space, and you are never alone on your healing journey. Until next time, be well, be whole, and be kind to yourself.